So very quickly, what is AOT? Basically, it's the practice of providing community-based mental health treatment under a civil court commitment as a means of motivating an adult with serious mental illness who struggles with voluntary treatment adherence to engage fully with their treatment plan. It also helps focus the attention of treatment providers on the need to work diligently to keep this person engaged in effective treatment. So it's important to know is to distinguish it between mental health court, which I know a lot of you are familiar with. Mental health court is in the criminal justice system, and it has a lot of similar features as AOT in terms of judicial engagement. But for AOT, these are people who have not committed a crime. The goal here with AOT is to keep them out of the criminal justice system. So real quickly, Ohio law, prior to the passage of Senate Bill 43 back in 2014, it basically says that somebody who is a danger to themselves, a danger to others, or was unable to provide for their own basic physical needs, or they were so gravely ill they needed, they didn't know, they couldn't take care of their basic needs. Those individuals could be subject to court order. In Senate Bill 43, we expanded the definition to include somebody who is unlikely to survive safely in the community, has a history of non-adherence to treatment, is unlikely to voluntarily participate in treatment, and without treatment, they were likely to relapse and become a danger to themselves or others. So you can see here we've really, opened it up to not just people who were at that moment a danger to self or others, but who had, if they continued to go without treatment, they would become a danger. And what makes AOT effective? We believe at the Treatment Advocacy Center, one of the key ingredients is what we call the black robe effect. It's really having a judge who commands, respect, ordering somebody to do something that they otherwise would not do. Just like, the general population, people with serious mental illness, have the same, respect for the black robe as most of us. And there's a subset of people, in that population, just as there is in the general population, who might not respect the robe. But the vast majority of us do, whether you have mental illness or not. And those are the people who AOT really works well on. If somebody has no regard for authority or for the black robe, chances are AOT won't be effective. It doesn't work for everybody, but it works for the vast majority of people under court order. And it is often, initially it begins with a judge sort of being very stern and making it clear that, that this is what the court expects from you. They expect you to participate in treatment, to take your medication, to come to court, to, show up at your meetings, and to be honest. And eventually what happens is the judge, as the relationship develops, the judge who's usually, we don't just pick any judges to do this kind of work. It really takes a special person, a judge that's compassionate, that really wants to see, make a difference in people's lives. And there are a lot of wonderful judges out there. You have one, at least we have one or two in your community who just do a phenomenal job. But eventually what they do is they become a motivator, they become a cheerleader, they're able to point out, unlike maybe, well, not that the mental health team can't do it as well, but a judge sort of has a little bit more impartial. They're not a mental health provider. They're really just able to help that person kind of see how their progress in treatment is improving the quality of their life, because they see them sort of periodically, and they can help, I've been in court when the judge has said to the individual, wow, look how wonderful you're doing. When I first met you 3 months ago, you'd just gotten out of the hospital. Your life was a mess. You remember your girlfriend broke up with you. You'd lost your job. You were disheveled. You were all fidgety. You couldn't look at me. And now here you are 3 months later. You look wonderful. You really seem a lot calmer to me. I understand you've gotten a new job. You just seem like you really, things are really coming together for you. What is it that you're doing now that you weren't doing 3 months ago that's, responsible for this change? And oftentimes they'll say, well, I've been, going to treatment, taking my medication, doing what I'm supposed to do, you know, and they may never have this epiphany, oh, I've got this serious mental illness, I better follow through with treatment, but they are able eventually to connect the fact that their quality of life is improving, and they can tie it back to this program. And you've got the judge, you've got your treatment team, you've got everybody really rallying behind you and supporting you and encouraging you. It also allows the judge in the mental health system to intervene early. So if you're, doing pretty well and then you miss a few appointments, you didn't show up for an injection and you're starting to, decompensate, the treatment team can notify the court, hey, Johnny's really struggling right now. We think it would be helpful for you to, have a little talk with him or pull him in, early and just to remind him that he's under this court order. So you can intervene quicker than the current system, which you have to, be a danger to yourself or others to get, the police to take you to the hospital. So we're trying to avoid all that by being able to intervene early. The other important thing about AOT, and you don't hear people talk about this very much, but it's not just the individual who's being placed under a court order, it's also the treatment team. So the treatment team is being ordered to provide this individual treatment. So oftentimes, these are the people that are really hard to treat. They're the ones that aren't showing up to their appointments on time. They're not returning calls. Sometimes you have to go out and find them. So it's the treatment team. If somebody, misses a few appointments, the judge is going to ask the treatment team, how come this happened? How did you allow this to happen? What steps did you take to make sure that they were getting where they need to be? What do we need to do to fix this? So it's everybody. And then the treatment team also has the judge kind of backing them up. So if somebody doesn't show up for a few appointments, the treatment team can tell the individual, hey, listen, you've missed your last 2 appointments. It's required of me to notify the judge and let him know that you've missed these appointments. I really don't want to do that. So you better show up for your next appointment or else that's what's going to happen. So everybody sort of leverages everybody else to get this to work. If somebody is not following through with treatment, unlike mental health court, we can't picked up and thrown in jail. We're not going to fine them. We can't say that they're in contempt of court or force them to get their medication. And that's the way it ought to be. The whole goal here is to keep people out of the criminal justice system. So it would be silly of us to say, well, if you don't follow through with treatment, we're going to put you in jail, when the whole purpose is to keep you out of jail. So in that regard, yes, maybe it doesn't have teeth, but that doesn't mean there are no consequences to non-adherence. There absolutely are consequences. And some of these consequences include extending the period of time that somebody is under an AOT order. Generally, how it works is somebody goes into the hospital, they come out on an AOT order. It's usually a 90-day period, and then it's generally continued at least once. So it could be continued for 6 months, a year, up to 2 years. Under the law, the judge can order somebody into AOT up to 2 years before they have to come back to court and have it continued again. So the judge could order that period of time. They could also increase the frequency that the person has to come to court. And different courts do it differently, but some courts will do where they see the person maybe every week for the first month or two, and then maybe every 2 weeks, and every 4 weeks, every 6 weeks. They'll extend the period of time that somebody has to show up to the meet with a judge. But if somebody's, starting to slip and not follow through a treatment, the judge can say, hey, you know what, I'm really worried about you. I want to start seeing you every week for a while until I'm convinced that you're back on track. So that can be a nuisance and a kind of a pain. So that's another consequence. The judge can also order the treatment plan to be reviewed. If there's a reason somebody's not taking medication because they don't like the side effects, and he can order the team, get back to the table. Let's come up with another plan because this one's not working. If somebody is starting to decompensate and these other things aren't working, a judge can absolutely issue a pickup order and have the police go and pick that person up and bring them in to have them evaluated. And if the evaluation shows that this person is, in trouble and needs to be hospitalized, then they can put them back in the hospital. And the other thing, too, is judge can offer incentives. If somebody's doing well, in addition to praising them, the judge, I know one judge in Summit County gives out movie tickets to people who are going about, doing exceptionally well. Little things, just little tokens, gift cards, that sort of thing, just as a reward for doing good. So there are three ways people can get into AOT. The most common is the one I just shared with you, somebody who's coming out of an involuntary hospitalization. That's the best time to get somebody onto AOT because they're in the hospital, they've been stabilized, they want to get out of the hospital, so they're willing to sort of, go along and be, they're able to understand what the roles and responsibilities are because they've been stabilized. It's just that, and then you also have a doctor who is willing to testify to tell the judge this person really could benefit from this program, and here's why. Another way to do it is you can initiate it straight from the community. Anybody, including family members, have the right under Ohio law to file an affidavit with the probate court to let them know that they, if they believe that their loved one meets criteria and would benefit from this program. It's often very difficult to do that, though, without a doctor being, convincing the, being there to convince the judge that this is what needs to be done. Because somebody, it's important to remember, this is a hearing, this is a trial, and all the due process protections that would be afforded anybody at trial are afforded to this individual under this. So they have an attorney, the person, the doctor or whoever filed the petition has an attorney, and the doctor or whoever the petitioner is has to show clear and convincing evidence that this person meets the definition. Remember, I showed you those four definitions under the law, or there's actually five, that they meet those criteria. And so it's really important to have a doctor there to testify. So oftentimes that's easiest to do when you've got the person at the hospital. The last way a person can get to AOT is through the jail or prison system. A person either going into jail for the first, the jail could choose to, the prosecutor rather could choose to dismiss the charges and then file an affidavit with the probate court if they think that that's a better fit for that individual, or if they're coming out of the hospital, the jail staff could file an affidavit with probate court afterwards so that they go back to the community under the supervision of this court order. But the most common way is number one, directly from the hospital. One thing that's important, so it's important to have an AOT, what we refer to as a program. It's a program because similar, if you're familiar with CIT, it's a program where, you're all communicating the mental health system and the justices, the judge, they're all communicating on a regular basis. They've got a process in place for how to file an affidavit. We heard earlier today, Maggie Tolbert from the Adams Board of Cuyahoga County explained the process in Cuyahoga County for filing the affidavit. They've got, it sounds like they've got a procedure that's well defined, so you would want to become familiar with how that process works. And you've got to be able to notify, you've got to have that communication between the mental health system and the court system. So when somebody is starting to decompensate or not adhere to their treatment plan, you have a mechanism for notifying the court so you can get in there quickly. And you got to be able to monitor people. You have to have the ability, if somebody's out in the community, somebody needs to be responsible for monitoring that person to make sure that they're showing up to their appointments. And then as we talked about, you have to be able to get in there quickly as things start to go south. And then as a team, you decide when is this person, when is AOT no longer necessary? When does the team feel like this person's going to follow through with their treatment, without this order? And that also, we think that usually takes a good year and a half, oftentimes for this, for somebody to be on AOT before they start to really, see the benefits of it and start to take responsibility for their own care. Real quickly, as I mentioned, Kendra's law is mandatory, so there's a lot of great statistics out of New York, and their Department of Mental Health constantly is reviewing their system to make sure it's effective. Reports out of New York State show that people in AOT there see a 77% drop in psychiatric hospitalization, 74% reduction in homelessness, 83% fewer people experience arrest, and 87% experience incarceration. So those are pretty astounding figures, and they've been realized in communities all over the country. Now, these are not unique findings at all. AOT also saves money. You know, if you're not convinced it's the right thing to do because it's humane, then money often gets people's attention, and it's logical if you think about it. You're reducing the number of times a person goes to the emergency room. You're cutting back on arrests and jail days. Clearly, it's a money saver. Just quickly, if you have a loved one who's in AOT, or you think that they would be a good candidate for AOT, be prepared for when. Don't wait for a crisis to hit your family. Be prepared. So when your loved one goes into the hospital the next time or is picked up by police, be familiar with the program and how to file an affidavit. Again, don't wait for the crisis. Contact the probate court and ask them what that referral process looks like. If your loved one gets put in the program, plan to attend their hearings, participate in treatment planning if they'll let you. If they're in there and they start to decompensate, let their treatment team know right away. When you see they're doing well, let them know you think they're doing great and help them celebrate. Be a cheerleader. That's the beauty of this program. You've got a whole team that's responsible for making sure they adhere to treatment, making sure they're taking their meds. You don't have to do that anymore, which I know is a huge blessing for a lot of people. So if you've got an issue, you don't have to deal with it directly. You can just notify the treatment team. And if you're not pleased with the treatment team, then you can notify the court. So it really takes a lot of that burden off of you and lets you be a family member. Finally, just want to encourage you to take care of yourself. Make sure that you recognize when you're stressed out and take good care of your physical health. Try and look on the positive side. I know for families in crisis, that's not always easy. It's one of the things AOT really lets you do, though. So that's a blessing. Make sure that you have a strong support network, and if you're not a member of a support group, I encourage you to check one out. I would never have survived without my support group, I can assure you. And then lastly, just know your limits. Don't be afraid to set boundaries. Look for ways to recharge yourself. I know a lot of communities have respite programs. So I would find out what's available in your community. And then lastly, and most importantly, advocate for system improvement, because as I mentioned, with two of those NAMI mommies who made AOT possible had already lost their loved ones, but they needed to advocate for others so others didn't have to go through what they went through. It's very cathartic, and it's a great way to give back, and it's very rewarding and fulfilling, and you feel like you didn't go through this for nothing because you're helping somebody else. I want to open this up for questions, and I just want to leave you with my contact information. I know if we run out of time for Q&A, never hesitate to email me or call me. If you have questions or something comes up later that you think about, I'm always available. I'm actually here in Ohio, even though our organization is based out of DC. I'm here in Ohio, and my first love is Ohio, so your calls are my priority.